Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, but more like yeah.
Taehyung beyond logic. Swim producers left speechless, shocking behind-the-scenes revealed. Hello ARMY. Welcome back to the channel. This time, don't go anywhere just yet. Because what we're about to talk about isn't just an ordinary behind-the-scenes moment. This is something that even people inside the industry can't easily explain. An event that at first seemed simple, hidden behind the camera, without massive spotlights, without a grand stage, yet somehow, this is where everything felt the most honest, the most raw, and the most real. And at the center of it all, there is one name that once again made the world pause, even if just for a moment. Kim Taehyung. The swim behind the scenes was supposed to be just another working day. The room was filled with structured activity. Lights were carefully arranged, cameras were tested over and over to capture the perfect angle, and everyone knew exactly what their role was. There was no room for surprises, because everything had already been planned. At least, that's what they thought. Until Taehyung walked into the room. There was no grand announcement when he arrived. No dramatic shift that could be seen instantly. And yet, somehow, his presence carried a change that couldn't be put into words. The atmosphere, which once felt technical and controlled, slowly turned quiet. As if even the air in the room adjusted itself. The staff, who had been busy with their tasks, began to slow down. Some of them, without realizing it, stopped what they were doing, just to look in the same direction. Toward Taehyung. And at that exact moment, something unplanned began to happen. Taehyung didn't immediately perform. He didn't make any grand gestures or try to draw attention. He simply stood there, observing, feeling the space around him. His gaze was focused, yet calm. As if he was becoming one with the atmosphere before giving anything to it. Then, without any dramatic cue, he began to move. His movements were simple. Almost too simple at first glance. But within that simplicity, there was a depth that was impossible to ignore. The way he lifted his hand, the subtle motion of his shoulders, the way he held a pause before continuing, everything carried meaning. And in that moment, the entire room locked onto him. The swim producers, people who had spent years in the industry, were not easily impressed. They had seen countless concepts, countless artists, countless perfect moments carefully designed. But this time, their reaction was different. One of them slowly leaned forward. His eyes fixed on the monitor. Not because he was searching for flaws, but because he was trying to understand what he was witnessing. Seconds passed, and the room grew even quieter. Finally, in a voice that was barely audible, he said, "Wait, do that again." It wasn't a command. It felt more like a request. Taehyung gave a small nod. Without saying much, he did it again. But this time, something shifted. His movements became slower. More controlled. Deeper. As if he was revealing another layer that hadn't been seen before. And in that moment, something truly changed. Not just for the producers. Not just for the team in that room. But for the entire space itself. Time seemed to slow down. Every small detail felt bigger. Every pause felt longer. Every gaze felt deeper. No one dared to speak. No one wanted to interrupt what was unfolding. Because everyone knew, they were witnessing something that couldn't simply be recreated. Someone behind the camera unconsciously lowered it slightly. Not because they lost focus, but because they were too immersed in the moment. For a second, they forgot their job was to record. The main producer, who was usually active in giving direction, now stood still. Arms crossed, eyes sharp, but his expression revealed something rare in a world driven by control. Genuine admiration. From the corner of the room, a quiet whisper was heard. "This is different." And that was the only way to describe it. ARMY may be used to seeing Taehyung shine on grand stages. with spectacular lighting, powerful music, and thousands, even millions, of eyes on him. But here, there was none of that. No distractions. No added effects. Nothing to help create the moment. There was only Taehyung, and what he carried from within himself. And because of that, everything felt even more powerful. After a moment that felt far longer than it actually was, someone started clapping. Softly. Not excessively. But full of meaning. The applause was followed by others. Not as a celebration, but as recognition. Recognition that they had just witnessed something rare. The producer spoke again, this time with certainty. Let's keep that. No revisions. No corrections. No long discussions. Because everyone in that room knew, that moment didn't need to be changed. It was already enough. Perfect, in its own way. And when that behind-the-scenes clip finally surfaced, ARMY around the world reacted in a very similar way. Confusion mixed with awe. Many couldn't explain why something so simple felt so powerful. Comments began to flood in. I got chills and he's barely moving. Why does this feel so different? This isn't just acting. I can't stop watching this part. There's something I can't explain. And that's when one thing became clear. Taehyung doesn't just perform something. He becomes it. Every movement isn't just choreography. Every expression isn't just practice. There's something deeper, something that cannot be created instantly. Something that can only be felt. And maybe, that's why the swim producers were left speechless that day. Not because they lacked experience. Not because they had never seen greatness. But because they knew, what they had witnessed was something that couldn't easily be replicated. In a world filled with massive productions and grand concepts, moments like this become the most valuable. Simple. Quiet. Yet deeply impactful. A man standing in an ordinary room, and without doing anything excessive, he made everyone stop. Not because he demanded attention. Not because he tried to stand out. But because something about him naturally pulled every gaze in his direction. And more than that, he made them feel something. Something subtle, yet impossible to ignore. A shift in the air. A silence that didn't feel empty, but full. Full of meaning, full of presence, full of something no one could quite put into words. At the end of that day, there was no big celebration. No dramatic announcement. Everything went on as usual. Conversations resumed. People returned to their routines. The world outside that room kept moving, just like it always does. But everyone who was in that room walked away with something different. A feeling. A quiet realization that what they had just experienced wasn't ordinary at all. That in the middle of something so simple, they had witnessed a moment that would stay with them far longer than they expected. That they had just witnessed something unforgettable. And for ARMY, that moment became a reminder. A reminder that Taehyung's power doesn't always come from grand stages or overwhelming performances. It doesn't always need bright lights or loud applause to be felt. Sometimes, it comes from the smallest things. From a gaze that lingers just a second longer. From a pause that says more than words ever could. From silence that speaks directly to the heart. From something that cannot be explained but can be felt. A presence that doesn't ask to be understood, yet is understood anyway. So if you felt that something was different when you watched that moment, if for a brief second, everything seemed to slow down, and all that mattered was that one quiet scene, it wasn't just you. Because even the people who were there, standing just a few steps away, felt the exact same thing. They felt time soften. They felt the atmosphere change. They felt a moment stretch into something almost timeless. And maybe, that's why this story continues to live on. Continues to be talked about, in whispers, in memories, in shared glances between those who understand. Continues to return, to the hearts of those who witnessed it, and even those who only saw it from afar. Because some moments don't need noise to become powerful. They don't need explanation to become real. They simply exist and leave their mark. Because Taehyung is not just part of a scene. He doesn't just move through moments. He transforms them. He is the moment itself. The stillness that captures attention. The quiet that holds emotion. The presence that stays long after everything else fades. And sometimes, that's all it takes to leave the entire world speechless.